Skip, just to obviously emotional ending to this ball game. Can you take us kind of through that momentum swing of thinking it was a game-tying home run to all of a sudden it's a ground rule double, you guys able to close it out?
The whole series, the whole homestand, honestly, was emotionally and physically exhausting. I mean, these guys are gassed in there. The bullpen is gassed. The position players are gassed. If I'm gassed, I can't imagine what those guys feel because that, there's some really tough end of the game, extra inning losses, and then to come back like that, it's really incredible. And then to win with, that type of play to end the game where it hits off the fence and hits the glove and bounces back out to get a double, and then Soriano to come back out after, blowing a save two nights before and, bearing down and getting Campy at the end is just shows you what that team's about. I mean, a lot of these guys are trying to figure out who they are at this level, and they're giving it everything they got. And we were in every single game. A couple games in against the Reds, we could have come back and won, and then we're in every game here. So to end it on a win is going to be a much better flight to Philly.
How significant was Jesus Sanchez's home run, not just in the sense you guys were able to tack on runs, but the fact that he was able to hit that home run off the lefty?
Well, there's no safe lead, as you can tell, with what the Padres have been doing lately, especially late in games. So any insurance run was going to be big. We scored 5 early and then none for about 4 or 5 or 6 innings in a row. So we needed to tack on runs. You knew the state of our bullpen. We had a bunch of guys down again. So we only had 4 guys available again. So we knew we had to add on just in case something like this happened. And then for Sanchez, to hit, he's been working hard against lefties, against relievers especially. He's been struggling. So to get a lefty reliever was really big for him, and obviously we needed those extra runs.
Max's longest outing of his young career, what stood out to you about the way that he was able to battle against that Padres line?
Well, he was on the attack. He had more strikes this time than last time. He threw his fastball down and away really well. The slider was really good. He threw 3 changeups to Cronenworth, 1 at bat, which shows you he's getting more confident in the changeup. So overall, just really good outing. Again, we had nobody out there available, so we needed length, just like we needed Cabby to have length, a couple nights ago. So for him to provide the 6 innings was pretty outstanding.
State of the Fish. Here we are, our usual weekly show, recapping all that happens, all that is going to happen with the Marlins, looking at the past and the present and the future, weighing in as a staff here at Fish on First, and also taking all of your calls throughout the show as well. Just request whenever you feel like it. We'll get to you pretty soon for any takes that you have on the state of the organization and any direction you want to go with that. This is Eli Sussman. Already got Louis Adio Wyson here, and from Fish on the Farm, Alex Carver, to help break down what's going on. I think we have to lead off with Jake Berger at this point. He has come up on the past few shows, and it's been kind of unavoidable how well he's doing in the power department going back now for really a full calendar month. He's been the best power hitter in baseball. Plays for the Marlins, has not been traded yet, and probably will not be traded imminently. Hit another home run today. Every other game, it seems, he has more home runs since the All-Star break than anybody else. And if you listen to Berger himself talk about it, the switch really clicked for him right before the All-Star break, and he has kept it going. It's been just a huge development considering how poorly he played for the first entire half of the regular season. And the quick summary of it, at least to me, is he is who we thought he was entering the year. For his career, a 114 WRC plus, 14% better than league average, mainly driven by the power that he has, including today. For this season, Jake Berger is up to a 111 WRC plus. And if he hits for this kind of power, he's 22 home runs this year overall, on pace for more than 30. Overall has 31 as a Marlin in right around 1 calendar year with the organization. You absolutely take that. And the Marlins just have not had many guys like that in their whole recent history, if you think about it, that are in this position. A guy that is earning the league minimum and who's also under club control for the next handful of years performing like this. They've brought in veteran players on free agent deals that have done something like this, such as a Jorge Soler, for example. Other than that, it's been a while since they've had somebody in this position right here who can at least fake it at a couple of different positions and stay in the lineup every single day. So even though it's obviously way, way too late for that to change their fortunes for 2024, it is a nice development long term on a team that has gutted. You've seen the stats out there that this Marlins active roster is earning like barely anything across this entire team. There's so little experience on here uh, based on everybody that they just ditched at the trade deadline. And even coming back next year, they have a lot of pitching coming back from injury, but they needed some sort of starting point with their offense because they actually have big league experience right here. So he once again, overall, 3 hits in this game. It's not only in the power department, 3 more hits in this one. And as a whole, he, as a hitter, he's hitting 251 for the season, which is right in line with where he was last year and right in line with where he was the year before. And that's now better than this day and age where it's harder than ever to get hits. He really stands out even in that department. So, Lewis, you were there. I wanted to start with him, but you can branch out from there about this really eventful win. Skip touched on it, that really this entire week has been chaotic with a lot of late game swings, mostly going against the Marlins, but they end up salvaging it with this final moment in this final series finale to avoid a sweep right here. But this Burger turnaround it's just not slowing down. It's not been a full month of him slugging at a level that really nobody else across baseball is doing.
I mean, he's OPSing. Entering today was over 1,000 since the 36, and a fifth of a season sample, over 120 plate appearances. And then after today, he's OPSing like a Bonzian, or if you want to go more contemporary, a Judgian 1284 in August and almost 50 plate appearances. So he's just been, absolutely like dialed in. Like this is probably the hottest he's maybe ever been in his career. And he actually made it an interesting inference to us post game where he was talking about just kind of having a lot of one-on-one time with Mabry and Bill Miller and a lot of the hitting guys on the staff, and saying that it was really post All-Star break or pre All-Star break in Cincinnati where he had a game where he just felt like he watched some tape back, made an adjustment with his hands. I'd have to look back at some of the tape to see where really what he's done with hand placement that's maybe aided him in this case. But then he said he had a 4-for-5 game, and then now he's last 5 games he has 5 home runs, 4 home runs, a home run in 4 of those 5 games, one of which included a multi-homer game. So he's just been some kind of locked in, and yeah, they need it right now for sure. Even though his corner infield comrade Jonah Bride has been good as well in a different kind of way. Berger's been the boon to the offense that they've kind of needed him to be post trade deadline. So very encouraging to say the least. But he's been some kind of.
I know from speaking to you offline, Carver, that you were very concerned about Burger this first half of the season, where he was legitimately a below replacement level player. That's somebody that, given how extended those struggles were, it looks like they could have taken some drastic measures to try to snap him out of it. But ultimately, he's able to figure it out at the big league level right there. And I guess it creates somewhat of a fun problem, right, with this next wave of guys that they just acquired. A couple of them who play first base or DH or profile best at those positions, that they now have one guy in place for the near-term future that slugs like this, but then a couple others knocking on the door that have somewhat similar potential.
Yeah, and that's what you call good problems to have. Yeah. So I mean, I've said it before on other shows that, like, if this guy, I think he found himself in a very a very good situation for himself, because he comes from the White Sox, which we all know what they're doing these days, and then he goes to the Marlins, which is a team that was going to give him a very, very long leash, and another team that would give him a long leash, and with another team, I think that leash would have been a lot shorter. With an option year left, even though he's still around under club control through 2029, I think that if he was on a winning team and doing what he was doing earlier in the season, then maybe he would have gone to AAA to try to figure it out. But he was able to do it at the big league level. For this kind of player that's as streaky as he is with contact, and when he makes contact, of course, it's loud almost all the time. But for him to even have a 5-game hit streak, which is what he has right now, as Lewis said, is probably one of the better streaks of his career. For other guys that are more bat to ball guys, that's probably a short stint. But for this guy to have a 5-game hit streak, I think is just super good. Really, really good for him. I don't think that should be understated. That for a power first hitter to have a 5-game hit streak, and on the streak that he's on, which is very, very good. I'm super glad to see that he was able to figure it out here. And like I said, just a good problem to have with whoever comes up after him, whether it's DDLS or whoever it may be that comes up after him. That's a good problem to have, is that you have too many guys and not enough positions to put them in. That is a good problem to have, not only for the short term, but also for the long term, because I think Berger, as long as he's hitting like this, will definitely be around for the long term or longer term, not just past this year. And then, of course, you have the prospects coming up behind him. So super good. I'm happy Berger was able to figure this out. He was a super cool guy. And yeah, it's super cool. This is one of the hottest hitters on the team, probably the hottest hitter on the team right now. It's great to see, and I'm glad that he figured it out. It's awesome.
On the mounds, what do we make of what Max Meyer did today, Lewis, where he set a career high with 6 1/3 innings pitched? He was perfect through 3, and then pretty steadily the Padres started scratching at him, and he ends up starting that 7th inning, but allows 1 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, 1 in that 7th, and he didn't walk anybody. Really efficient with his pitches, but at the end of the day, I think his ERA actually ticks up a tiny bit. So it was quite different from his last couple of starts, and an improvement on that. But yeah, how much of an improvement would you say?
I definitely like the fact that he threw a lot of changeups. I believe he threw something like 15 or 16 on the day, which is important for a guy whose future as a starter is predicated largely on can he kind of develop a third pitch, and that changeup seems to be the pitch that he's trying to make that third pitch. So I think important to see that. I like too the fastball. Obviously, he doesn't have by like modern big league standards. He's still he's gonna be one of those guys where I think 96 is gonna be a seldom seen thing, where he's gonna kind of live 93 to 94, similar to what we saw with Trevor Rogers earlier in his career and what he settled into. Albeit I think Meyer, as a whole, has the ceiling to be a better pitcher. But I was encouraged. First half of the game he looked amazing. Obviously, he was just very efficient with his pitches. I believe he threw like 23 pitches through the first 3 innings, and then of course, Luis Rise breaks up the no hitter, and the Padres start kind of stringing some hits together, and I think that not even is it just a testament to Meyer not really being completely, not completely knowing who he is as a big leaguer yet, as a starter at the major league level, but also just a testament to the Padres, just showing how they're going to be one of those teams that, they're in contention for a playoff spot now, and I think they have one of the wild card spots, but they're going to be a team that's going to kind of sit around for a long time, and it'd be really scary when they get into October. But for Meyer to, stymie them for the first half of his outing, and then not only to make it into the 7th inning when Skip Schumacher said he needed length on a guys like Max, and maybe, if Skip's being conservative and he has a more rested bullpen, after 83 pitches in 6 innings, Meyer's probably done. But for Skip to believe in him to go out for the 7th inning, that says a lot, albeit, Meyer didn't finish. But I think, again, it was just, a work in progress. It's things that he can build off of with the, spotting his fastball away and such. But, I don't think, again, it was enough, and he gave them length to where he was able to get a win. Just, you make the most of it what you can.
Yeah, the thing with the changeup is it's still not missing bats very often. I remember right before he got sent down, there was that one start against the Braves where it looked sharp and he was actually putting hitters away with. In this case, as you noted, he threw 15 of them and no swings and misses at all on it. So it's one that needs to locate the right way to steal called strikes, and there's some value in that. If it's not going to be a swing and miss pitch, it still does leave him pretty reliant on sliders to finish guys off right here. It's he ends up allowing. We should acknowledge Luis Ariz, and that was obviously a big aspect of this series to have him returning to Miami, and he was as advertised. He had 6 hits during this weekend, including 3 today, almost all of them singles, true to his form, but pretty consequential ones. in those previous couple of games, and he also had a productive out last night that I think drove in what ended up being the decisive run. So he was putting his bat on almost everything right there. In the clash of leadoff guys, I think he outperforms Xavier Edwards by a little bit. If you take all those factors into consideration, right there, he was overshadowed a little bit by his own teammate, by Jackson Merrill. And I could ask Carver for your feedback on that, because we were on the same page entering the series. We picked him as the series MVP from our perspective, and he did exactly what we envisioned him doing, which is more of what he had done, entering the series and making the Padres the hottest team in baseball. He single-handedly changed the direction of those first two games by hitting late-inning, game-tying home runs against whatever is left of this bullpen. So he has to be, I don't think he's going to win Rookie of the Year in the National League. There's that Paul Skeens guy overshadowing him. But still, that guy has made a pretty significant difference in terms of why the Padres are where they're at in the top wildcard spot.
Yeah, he's so good. I really, really like that player. I mean, lefty hitter, true center fielder, hits to all fields. If not for Paul Skeens, this guy would be up there as a favorite for sure. He's also pretty quick. Runs the bases pretty well. Hits for power. Hits for average. The only thing he does a little bit too much for the liking of anybody would be striking out and not enough walks. But of course, it's his first year in Major League Baseball, so that's something that they can figure out. And again, he's 21 years old, just 21 years old, doing so much already. This guy is going to be very good. I think he is an awesome player, and I am very jealous of the Padres for having this guy in their organization. But it's like we were saying on the show, the preview show, that it's kind of a mix of guys. Like, they have traded for guys, and then of course they have guys like this that are also coming up from their minor league system and doing very well. They have a great system. I like the San Diego system a lot. So trading with them is always fun. The Marlins did it with them this offseason. So and last season as well. So yeah, I really like the Padres system. I think it's a really good system to deal with. They do it right. They know what they're doing, and this is a pretty cool player here that you got in Jackson Merrill.
In this Marlins system, it's improving. It's on its way up. I need to stick with you just to fill everybody in on what's happening with Jacksonville today, where three of the guys they just acquired in trades in Connor Norby from the Trevor Rogers deal, and Davison De Los Santos from the Puck deal, and Augustin Ramirez from the Jazz deal. All of them have been playing consistently for Jacksonville. They've all had some bright moments, but today it's all coming together at the exact same time. Just get people, that game is still in progress, but get people caught up on what they've already done in the first 7.5 innings of that game.
Yeah, so all of those players that you mentioned have already homered in that game. Davis and De Los Santos hit a ball out of the stadium. Augustin Ramirez hit a low curveball off the scoreboard. So you just see the ridiculous power potential of those two players. It is really insane. And then Connor Norby tacking one on as well. He gets a homer out of there as well. So really cool. The true power potential of those two players, even though they're defensively limited, both of those players are defensively limited. Again, we talk about that with the corner infield spots possibly having some traffic coming up pretty shortly, as early as next season. I think both of those guys would be ready next season. At least offensively, they will be ready next season. Augustin Ramirez and De Los Santos, and then Norby as well, who's also pretty close and one of the top, well-regarded overall, well-rounded offensive prospects that the Marlins have in the system. I think he's our top guy offensively in our last ranking. So yeah, to see him get a home run first as a Marlin is cool. That team just went off today offensively. Just struggled a little bit pitching wise, but they did a bunch offensively today. So to see it, like you said, all come together at once for all three of those trade pieces is super awesome. And then, of course, down in Double A, you have Jared Cerna, who's just been an on-base machine ever since he joined the Marlins organization. So the Marlins are seeing the fruits of this trade deadline come to fruition pretty damn quickly, and that is very, very awesome to see that this team that everybody thought a couple of months ago was going to be a 4 to 5 year project. Look at these guys that they have in Double and Triple A. Pretty cool.
I'm going to start bringing in our speakers right here. So if you haven't already, just push a request. If you have any takes you want to share or any questions you want to drive our way. T-Bone Malone brought you in. What's on your mind? Happy to have you here.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? Good to see we got the dub. It got a little scary there at the end, but fortunately, the bounces quite literally went our way, that they hadn't previously in last couple games. So that was good to see. I just wanted to say there was one thing in particular I saw Peter Bendick say that I had been kind of wondering. I didn't see anything specifically on it, but I think I saw it from one of your guys' channels. But one of his interviews, he alluded to, doing something differently that the Rays uh, don't necessarily do, which, I kind of figured, in the conversations with Bruce Sherman hiring him, you don't get to, his level of being a top executive of a team if you don't have like original ideas. Of course, he cut his teeth with the Rays, ended up being the GM there. But I had always kind of suspected, and I don't know what it's gonna look like necessarily, but I was happy to see that when he did say that there's certainly things that Marlins are going to be doing moving forward that they didn't necessarily do over in Tampa. But yeah, I mean, it has. Sorry, what was that?
Well, I think now that you bring it up, I think it is like I think everybody should probably agree on that. That for as much interesting and productive, consistent things that the Rays have done with their baseball team, like it's never a good strategy to try to copy what somebody else is doing and try to impersonate them because you simply can't from having a different position. And it's not as if even if he is so loyal and so appreciative and has learned so much from them, it doesn't mean that they're a flawless organization because they aren't. Because every organization has uh, the differences between these clubs in some aspects isn't quite as wide as you might think it is. It's really on the margins that these decisions go one way or another, and that ends up turning out to be a bigger difference in the standings than you might think. At the same time, you would hope that that's kind of what I would expect from him, even if he hasn't really vocalized it until just recently. That you want to build your own organization with that background, with that education, quote unquote, that he got coming through their system. Even though that's valuable, it's everything is different because the people are different. He couldn't bring very many ex-Rays employees over to this organization, and the people from the ownership on down, from Bruce Sherman on down, it's a change in environment that it wouldn't be possible to copy them from top to bottom if you wanted to, and I'm just glad that he has the awareness to not do that, and he also has some conviction in his own ideas in order to pursue that. We're still really early on in terms of seeing how it is things are different and what distinctly is a Marlins quality in terms of the players that they go after and what they value and how they think ultimately putting together a successful roster at the big league level, what traits lead up through that. It's still a while until we really see that all play out, but I, like you, was pleased that he took it in that direction.
Yeah, and it had been a bit frustrating just because, like, the media narrative was like, okay, they're going to be the Rays 2.0. They're going to be copying and pasting, and like I said, that was the first time I had officially seen it. Like, I had to assume, he's a pretty smart guy, and you gotta be pretty ambitious too to get to levels he has. And when Craig was on here answering some questions, he didn't, because I had asked him that, and he didn't, and not that, again, not that we necessarily know. Of course, he likes to keep certain things close to the vest. There are legitimate trade secrets, if you will, when you're running an organization. But yeah, overall, I would say, uh, I was very pleased with generally how the deadline went from going to like you said, or this was looking like more of a 4 or 5 year project to who knows, speeding it up at least a little bit because we're taking advantage of a seller's market, and just what's the point in going for fourth place in the NL East in a couple years if it kind of sucks, but if you're gonna do best um, you know 260 win seasons, and then maybe you look like you're ready to go, but as far as competing or close there. But yeah, that's kind of all I got for today. But yeah, it was it's definitely on the edge of my seat there at the end, but good to get the win.
Well, I'm glad you did mention that Stowers play at the end. What would have been, well, it looked like it was a game-tying home run from Ha-Seong Kim right there that ends up being a ground rule double. And that makes sense, I guess, when you look back at it, that it had stayed in the park. It had clearly bounced in the direction towards the field, and that even though Stowers didn't allow it to touch the grounds because he was fumbling to try to control it himself, even though it didn't actually touch the grounds, I guess that makes sense that it wouldn't count towards a home run. And really, there have been a couple examples. Not just the Jose Canseco one, that's the most famous one, but even more recently, I believe in 2020, it was with Joe Adell in the Angels, where he had to play at the wall like that, where he inadvertently like pushed it over the wall. But that was one where he was the first one to touch it after touch that ball instead of the wall. And I think that's kind of the distinguishing factor, that if it already touches the wall and comes back in, that's different than somebody trying to catch it and pushing it over the wall without even touching it in the first place. I'm just relieved for Kyle Stowers more than anything else, because there's no sugarcoating it. He's been terrible since joining the team like 2 weeks ago. Um, as bad as any player in baseball, all things considered. He's striking out in half of his plate appearances. He got a single today, but even with that hit today, this would have felt like a new rock bottom for him if he was the star in that kind of play. That ended up being another game-tying home run right there. Only a matter of inches between being over the wall and not right there. And at the same time, I guess they end up pulling it out because of that game of inches. But this weekend was a really rough one for that Marlins bullpen. You mentioned about the possibility of this team turning it around quicker than originally thought. And one of the challenges is going to be replenishing this bullpen. That was the main position that they depleted in their trade deadline deals. I agree with the consensus that they got really good value for those deals. At the same time, you're not going to be able to get those relievers back. The only one that's going to be a free agent is Tanner Scott, and you can be sure that the Marlins are not going to make the highest bid for his services. You need to replenish these guys with ones that are already in your organization, or by, as you've seen, by trying to just frantically claim players off of waivers and hope that one of them sticks so far. And now it's been a combination of these waiver claims understandably being over their head, and also the guys that you thought were pretty good, such as Andrew Nardi today, Anthony Bender yesterday, one that are also in the middle of those struggles right there. It is hard to really point to a single guy in this pen and be really confident that they're going to be a great reliever moving forward. I guess Calvin Fauché is the closest to that. He's the one that's gotten most of the closer opportunity looks since that trade deadline. And he had one screw up in Atlanta, if I remember correctly, but otherwise it's been more positive than negative with him. At the same time, this has gone from being one of the deepest bullpens in baseball to now being one where it's on the other end of that spectrum. So that's going to be a challenge for Bendix to find these guys that to try to guess right. And he's shown in a couple of cases that he can do it. But even Declan Cronin, for example, he's had yet another bad outing in his aspect. He's been really hittable as of late after having that good, surprising first half of the season. That's one of those lingering questions, and I don't even think down the stretch you're going to get an answer to it. That's something they'll have to wait until spring training and the start of next season to get an idea of whether this bullpen is anywhere close to being a competitive one, because they had to take a big step back in order to address those other positions. Next caller, we are joined by LMF, who was at the ballpark today, most likely, and I know he's really excited about this series. What's on your mind, LMF?
Yeah, it was a great game, tough series. I go and sit with season ticket holders who really give them credit, attend as close to 81 games as possible, win or lose. And we're all saying the same thing. Uh, the bullpen that we have, as you just said, is just broken right now, and it's not going to be fixed this season. But they're excited about what's happening down in the minors because I think everyone's following it closer and really just impressed with the type of players that are being picked off waivers who are DFA scrubs from other teams or cut for whatever reasons. I know I'm excited about it. So yeah, great time at the ballpark today. I know the energy seemed sitting right next to the dugout. The energy seemed to still be there for the team. Had a 45-second talk with Kyle Stowers. He seemed in good spirits. Obviously, you never mention any struggles to any players. That would just be asinine and rude. But you try to get a feel for how they're feeling. And, he came out and got that hit today, which is good. I would have felt horrible for him, as you just kind of took what I wanted to talk about. Would have felt horrible for him if he was the cause or the root cause of this team losing today. I like how they interpreted the MLB rule, and I was thinking Canseco the second I saw it, so I'm glad that it was a little bit different. And Kyle Seeloff did a heck of a job on the after show, really explaining the difference in the rules. If you get a chance to go listen to that. But overall, thank you for having me on the Fish on First kickoff show or pregame show, Fish on First Live, FOS Live, I guess it's called, on Friday. But if to those listening to this, they have it every pregame, uh, pre-series episodes. So
Yeah,
thanks for having me there.
yeah.
And
Before every series opener, we do that. And
there you go.
you were pretty on the money calling out. Well, not predicting this, but saying that Edward Cabrera could have really used a quality start for him in that series opener after going so long without it, and he delivered exactly that before the
Yeah.
bullpen came in. They won this 7 scoreless innings. So yeah, how excited are you now that Eddie has built upon? He was already having some decent success the previous few times, but now 5 start stretch with a 2 ERA.
You just hope it continues. So whatever they're giving to him, whatever advice, he's probably getting the bulk of a lot of attention now since he's one of only a few handful of great good starters we might have left. I just hope it continues for him. You just don't want it to get into his head because once he gets in his head, he just starts walking everybody. So if he can stay out of his own head, be confident, and pitch the way he showed he can on Friday, you hope that he continues doing it and he brings us some value when he's finally dealt, because they're probably still going to look into that, and you hope he brings his value up over the off as we go into the off season. But I'm looking forward to Jeopardy tomorrow. I don't know if you've promoted that yet, so I'll enjoy watching that for you guys. And just on a personal note, it's tough as us fans losing players that we've gotten close to. It was nice seeing Luis Arise this weekend. I spoke with him pregame, and we were able to meet up, have a quick hug, and exchange. I gave him some cards I've been collecting of him for him. He's really a genuine person. It's a sad loss, but he always wants me to tell everyone, to the fans, because he understands we're hurting. Believe in the team, cheer for the guys who are in our uniform. And he will always consider his time in Miami a very special time with the fans and the people that he met. So just remember that they are human too, and they feel it, and they feel your negativity and positivity, and it goes both ways. So thank you for having me on your show. I will drop off and listen for the rest of the night. Thank you.
Thank you as always for coming in. Parrish, we got you on. What's on your mind, sir?
Thanks for taking the time, guys. I just have two quick questions. One, I know you guys said that for, I guess, the next month or a month and a half, some of these players are going to get like a longer look to see what they are in the big leagues. Who do you think will get, I guess, more so like the longest leash and the shortest leash, for these next like 2 months. I know they're rotating guys, in and out the lineup and in and out the pitching rotation, depending on, the arms and the bats available. And then the second one is just as far as like the prospect wise, if they do call people up next year, since you said the next year would be kind of like a tank year somewhat, like this year, exactly like this year, a lot of losses. So we should see prospects on that end. Who could we possibly see, I guess, called up to get a long look for next year who isn't getting a look this year?
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Carver.
No, I was just going to. Oh, so the first part of your question is guys that are currently on the roster that you think are going to get a long look. I mean, I
Yes.
don't, I don't think there's that many, honestly, that deserve a long look. That's to be honest with you. I mean, you're looking at guys like, like Ollie Sanchez, Jonah Bride. These guys have been up and down. Um, I mean, we could say Edwards, but that's kind of silly just based on the fact that we know he's going to be here the rest of the year. But I guess I would say him and then Stowers. Stowers is the guy that they traded for. I know it hasn't been a good start for him, but I think he will spend the rest of the year in Major League Baseball and go to spring training and see what happens there. So I don't think there's a chance that they send Stowers down. I don't think he has anything left to prove in AAA, so I think that he will stick for the rest of the year. But then these other like role players like Derek Hill, David Hensley, stuff like that. I mean, I guess we could also say Emmanuel Rivera, not because he deserves it, but because the Marlins have held on to that guy, even though he's probably been deserved to be sent down for a while. And that's not being unkind; it's just telling the truth. So those are your guys that are likely to get longer looks or have already gotten longer looks, I guess I should say, from the position player side. They're going to have to keep some of these pitchers up just because of what's happened with the rotation. That's why you see guys like Munoz still around and stuff like that. They've been up and down with Kent Emanuel. He's back now. So, I mean, pitching side, I guess it's just based off of necessity than anything else. These are the closest guys they have, and they know it. So,
Right.
in terms of guys that like the pitching side is much different than the positional side. Positional side, I think it's those few guys. One that's already gotten a long look for whatever reason, and then the others just because I think that they know what they have in the future of those guys, and they have nothing left to prove in the minors, like Edwards and Stowers. For guys that they could call up, I actually just tweeted this out. I think that they could call this guy up as part of September call-ups because he damn well deserves it. Javier Sanoja. That guy's a 21-year-old kid. He plays all over. He can play in the outfield. He can play in the infield. He even plays shortstop and second base. That guy deserves to be on the major league team. He dealt with it so well in spring training, wasn't overwhelmed by it at all. They put him in AAA to start the year and challenged the shit out of him, and he's dealt with it so well. That guy is a very good baseball player. He deserves a chance to show what he's got in major leagues. He's in the major leagues by the end of this year. Even though he's 21, I think that he's earned it. So Javier Sanoja, especially with no Victor Mesa Jr. in the fold because he's injured, I think Javier Sanoja deserves top guy for me deserves to be called up to show what he can do. And then of course you got the guys that they traded for, Ramirez and De Los Santos and all those guys. But man, if anybody's made an impression on me this season, of course we're still getting to know these top prospects that they got back and know that they're good. But if there's one guy that we should call his name out today, it's Javier Sanoja. That guy deserves to be called up.
I'd have to agree at this point. I've been kind of stubborn about it just because he's so young. He turns 22 next month. He's been playing this whole season at 21, hitting .304 in AAA with insane contact skills while playing center field and shortstop and second base right there. And he got off to a relatively slow start, too. The way that he's performed now for about 3 full months, he's just been extraordinary. And even when you adjust for all the factors that you can adjust for him to do it right at the AAA level for that much, in a way that you really have to be curious about how much of it is going to translate to the majors. And it could be a lot more than we were thinking at this time, even last year. As a reminder, last year, he was spent most of the season at low A. And to go from that to the very next year spending the majority of your season at AAA, there's just not a whole lot of precedent for it. Yet somehow his offense has gotten even better than it was at that time a year ago. He's going to be Rule 5 eligible this offseason anyway. They have to put him on the 40-man roster anyway. And given just the lack of alternatives and the suspects that are filling out their position player group right now on the active roster, it's really a more compelling case than it ever has been that he might as well come up because wouldn't you rather have him get his feet wet than to give extra reps to all these other players on this roster right now that are going to be, unfortunately, a lot of these guys are going to be cut immediately after the season ends. They have to bring all those injured pitchers back from the IL and put them on the roster, and the guys getting squeezed off for a lot of the guys that are on the roster right now. It's really fascinating. It's a fascinating discussion to have, but he's done absolutely everything he can in his power to make himself an option for them.
I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but just to see the trajectory that happened in the last 6 months or so, we were all so surprised and we thought it was a mistake when we saw him at AAA to begin the year, and the fact that he's performed so well over the entire summer. Yeah, I'm excited, man. Just the contact rates are just really, really fun to watch, and it's going to be exciting when and if he makes it this year. I think he's right, since they have to put him on the roster anyway, maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if he makes his major league debut in 2025. But I would love to see him up. I agree with Carver and Eli. I think he deserves it.
Anything else, Parrish?
Yes, just with I guess with the Sonoa situation, I know the organization said they're going to be aggressive, letting these players, get the challenge of the next level. Do you think they wait for the lower minor promotions until like the end of the season, going into the winter, or do they do some of those promotions before the MLB season ends and the MILB season ends?
You're
Thank
talking
you.
about draft players?
No. Just players, in different levels, moving up, towards the end of the season. Like, do they wait for the season to end, or would they do it towards when some of these other players get called up to the show or to AAA or AA?
Well, it's a case by case basis. The most intriguing guy to bring up here is Thomas White, who we have ranked as the number one guy in this whole organization, and he's doing so well at high A. I am fascinated to see whether or not he gets a taste at double A before the season ends. He's pitching better at high A than he did at low A, even. He keeps getting better. For anybody that hasn't seen it this morning, Fangraphs did like this quick interview with him, and he talks about how he changed his breaking ball, which was one of his biggest, most appealing factors entering pro ball, that he had this, most people regarded it as like a curveball. It's this slow breaking ball entering the pros that was like a big reason why he was considered a intriguing first round talent heading into the draft at this time a year ago. And he explains that he's already changed that pitch a lot since coming to the pros by throwing it harder, by making it move different and sweep instead of dip like a typical curve or a slurve did. That it's now like a sweeper, and he did it based on like the feedback he was getting on his pitch data, that if you threw it a little bit harder and if he threw it at that kind of angle, that it would play off of his fastball and his other pitches in order to miss more bats. That is the whole package with him has been so encouraging because of not just how well he's pitched, not just how consistent he is, not just the good command that he's shown, but also his willingness to learn on stuff like this and make adjustments even when he's already having success with his old stuff. So we couldn't be more impressed with him. He's only 19 this entire season. There's no rush with him, but at the same time, if he's qualified, if he's somebody that he has these innings left, if he's still feeling healthy and they feel like it's not an extra health risk to keep him pitching deep into September on a once a week schedule, that's the one guy that I'm most fascinated by, that's actually deserving, where he's ready, performing in a small sample. He's just checked every box that you'd want. So with Thomas White in particular, I'm fascinated to see whether or not he gets a shot by the end of the year at Pensacola, where he's right now at Beloit. But but aside from that, there were a recent wave of promotions from Jupiter to Beloit, and it's among the guys that are at Double A in Pensacola. Like, honestly, a lot of those guys just haven't played very well, with the exception of the newest guy, Jared Cerna, and he was just, when he came over in the trade, that was already a promotion for him to play at Double A for the first time. So I don't know if there aren't really a ton of obvious promotion candidates left. You just have to circle a few of them, and the ones that stick out are, of course, Javier Sanoa already from AAA to the majors, but also Thomas White, potentially high A to Double A.
Okay,
I think
appreciate
just
it.
on the basis of positional flex, whereas the Pensacola team is doing everything that they can to get this guy into, I guess, new positions and positions where they think that he could be okay. They put him in right field. They've had him at second base. They've had him at a bunch of different places. But if he keeps going on the offensive trajectory that he's going on, because lately offensively, even though if you look at the overall numbers, you wouldn't think he's been very good. But lately, Jacob Berry has been hitting. So perhaps, and this is a perhaps, it's not a sure thing, perhaps they give him the look at AAA, which opens the door for somebody else, one of those more defensively friendly guys, to promote to Double A. From Beloit, man, I mean, like I said, like Eli just said, they just made a bunch of promotions, so I don't know who it would be, but man, that Pensacola team has struggled a bit this year with overall, like, just the overall talent level hasn't been too terribly good for Pensacola. If you want to point to maybe like someone who could get called up from Beloit to Pensacola, I guess. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, that guy just got called up, so not him. I mean, it's there's just so many, like, there's so many guys that literally just got called up to Beloit that are hard to kind of fit in. I would like to see Carson Milbrandt go up there. We saw Jacob Miller go up. I would like to see Milbrandt go up because I think they're at similar areas of their career. I would like to see Milbrandt go up. And then Cape is on rehab right now, so he's got to come back, and you got to do something there to make room. So it'd probably be lower end guys that come up from Beloit to Pensacola. But yeah, I mean, the higher heralded guys, I would love to see Thomas pitch in Double A. Noble has also said, like he told me this spring, like his goal by the end of the season would be to make it to Double A. I don't think he's really pitched deserving of that just yet. But if you could string together a couple of good starts, maybe you could see Noble and Thomas continue to go up the ladder together. We'll see. But yeah, there will be some movement before the end of the year for sure. With higher heralded or top prospects, I think it's going to be more depth movement personally for the rest of the season. But we'll see. I would love to see Thomas go up. I'd love to see Noble go up too if he could string together a couple more good starts. But we'll see.
We'll finish off with Cole in here. What's on your mind, Cole?
Cole, can you hear Eli?
He unmuted himself. He's still a speaker, but he's not saying anything. He always has something to say.
Well,
I guess we'll end it right there then.
all right.
As LMF helped us promote earlier in the show, we do have, well, actually, Cole's going to try one more time to come in here. How about now? Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, so what's currently the mood in the clubhouse? I mean, I know we're tanking right now, but I'm curious, like how are like our how's everyone feeling there?
We need Isaac or somebody in here for that one.
Well, as best as I can tell, I think the mood is all right. There's naturally some awkwardness to having all these guys on a roster that don't know each other. So many of them having been not even in the organization until a couple weeks ago. I guess that is somewhat of a unique feature of this group, to have a lot of your friends traded and moved out in since then. That maybe the chemistry isn't obviously optimal under these circumstances, but in terms of the actual vibes, I think all things considered for a team in this situation, that itself has been all right. And I guess one element of that has been the injured guys being around the team. As you may have noticed, almost every step of the way that Sandy has been around this team throughout the entire year, little things like that add up. That even the ones that are unavailable, the fact that they're still around and able to contribute in that way, as we've LMF want to come in again on that. Under these circumstances, it's been all right, but it's definitely a lot different from a White Sox situation where you don't have anger in there, and you don't necessarily, even under the circumstances, you need to give some credit to Skip with kind of being realistic with where this team is going, instead of in other disappointing team circumstances. There's that temptation to panic, to do something different, and to in a way that like makes life harder on the players. And I think this coaching staff has kind of been realistic with their outlook from very early on. So that is one of the only silver linings to having a disappointing team, is to have one that from the very beginning of the season, you could tell that they're going to be deficient in some areas. And so the best way to go about it is just focus on making little improvements and just taking it day by day and player by player in these situations, rather than doing anything too drastic that would rub others the wrong way. And the fact that they've been playing decently, I guess they've been playing better over the last month than they had been for the first 3+ months. Things like that, help. That there really hasn't been a stretch since the very start of the season. There hasn't been a stretch where they're getting humiliated for an extended period of time. There really hasn't been any crazy long losing streak aside from that very first one going on. So in terms of all the guys that are still here in this organization moving forward, I don't think there's been any hurt feelings from them. And the complication, of course, is just knowing that, or thinking very likely that the coaching staff is going to look a lot different next year, that the front office is still going to be contemplating trades next year. So even though it's not a toxic environment in any way, it's a little uncomfortable when you have a team that's very clearly in transition, where nobody is untouchable. I think you sense that a little bit, that nobody's fully settled in the way that you like them to be, and feel like this is their long-term home. You have something on that, LMF?
Yeah, thanks for bringing me back in. Great question, Cole. So, what you get to kind of see when you're able to see into the dugout is the way they interact with each other. And one thing that did change from the last homestand to this one, that at least I've been to both, was that the handshakes that you experience or you watch them do before the game starts. This is more hi, nice to see you, high five. But except for Jake Berger with a few of the other players, you didn't get the customized handshakes that they normally have. So you got to assume they're very excited to be there. Again, being brought in from other teams, they're basically brothers for 6 months at a time from spring training on. So when there's a shakeup, there obviously is some time that it'll take for new players. But when there's 6 or 7 of them, they'll get to know each other. You kind of saw good camaraderie when they emptied the benches today, which I don't know why they emptied the benches today. If someone could go over that for me, I missed that. But I saw that on the field, but I didn't have announcers telling me what was happening. But just them jumping off and having each other's back also goes a long way. So thank you. That's all I wanted to add there. Thanks.
Yeah, and a part two to this question, which is leadership. Like, who's really taking over the leader role, especially with so much of, our team kind of emptied out?
It's a great question in terms of who did it. And I don't think there is a clear answer at this moment right here. Leading all the way up until the trade deadline, Josh Bell would be somebody to point to that had those qualities and had somewhat of a willingness to do that. And then, of course, he gets moved on that deadline day, and he was going to be a pending free agent anyway. So you're left with a team where, among the guys that are actually healthy and actually on the active roster, these guys just don't have a whole lot of experience, and also they're ones that kind of understandably have to still establish themselves in their careers. Like, there's to be a leader, generally in so many of these cases across baseball, you have to be comfortable with where you are in your career. You have to have there is that first phase where these guys want to establish themselves first and make some money for themselves first and get some sort of security. But here, the one guy that is on a multi-year extension that's still left is Sandy. And Sandy, if you heard him on an interview he gave on the TV broadcast yesterday, he told this really interesting anecdote about Rodri Munoz and how he noticed that he was tipping all of his pitches early on this year. So he made a suggestion about how he could change his setup and where he held his glove before throwing each pitch in a way that would better disguise things. And he gave like this very specific coaching nugget from this guy in Rodri Munoz that let's face it is a very fringy player that there's no guarantee he's going to be on this 40-man roster beyond this year. He might not be part of the future, but Sandy being around the team and also having that innate quality of actually wanting to help guys, volunteered that regardless of whether it works or not. Like among the guys remaining in the organization, you'd say that Sandy checks the most of those boxes because he has so much security in who he is, not just financially, but also a deep inner confidence in there for him to be. He knows what this Marlins organization is about more so than the guys actually leading the front office at this point. He's just been here forever, it seems. That in being bilingual, that stuff matters too. Being able to, in some ways, deeply connect with each of your teammates. He'd be the closest thing they have to a leader on the roster right now. The other guys, there's just so little continuity and so little experience that he's really the one guy that comes to mind among who's still left.
Yeah, I've been. Last year we had Yuli Gurriel, who kind of really, I think, kind of helped transform the team's mindset and like kind of push them into that playoff mentality. So I'm hoping that we can find that again.
Yeah, the issue this past offseason is the veterans that they brought in on those short deals were just not good enough anymore to stick on the team throughout the entire year, whether it was Tim Anderson or Christian Bethancourt even, maybe Bethancourt personality-wise more so than Anderson. That Bethancourt was somebody that came well regarded from the intangible standpoint. Yeah, if you're just not on the team, there's some things that you can impart while you are with the team, but once you're let go, it's not like he's leading from the Cubs clubhouse anymore at this point. And that's why it's important every single year, at least in my opinion, to make some of those veteran acquisitions. Even if they just spend it one single season with the organization, that can make quite a bit of difference. So I imagine there are going to be, I would hope that there's going to be some sort of investment in those guys next season. With the trades that they made, there's so little money on the books for 2025 that you think that there's going to be, even without having like a strong desire and a motivation to win games in 2025, you would hope that they carefully choose veterans in free agency on short-term deals that can bring some of that to the clubhouse that they honestly have very little of right now.
My last question is kind of about the off-season, winter meetings kind of thing, and that's we obviously really emptied the tank in regards to our healthy players at the trade deadline. Do we have any juice for this off-season in terms of trades?
It comes down to the starting pitchers at this point. With Luzardo, it seems that he's out for the year, based on the prognosis he's been given, the instructions he's been given. He's not even going to have time to build up as a thrower by the end of the year, which leaves Braxton Garrett and Ryan Weathers as guys who should be back in time before the end of the season to make a couple starts and show that they're healthy again. And you wonder, once that gets put on the table, and once Edward Cabrera, I guess, is probably the easiest one to bring up here, just because he is healthy and available. He is going to be given every chance to stick in this rotation, even when Weathers and Braxton maybe get back by the end of the year. That Cabrera is somebody they've tried to trade before. They had those well-reported discussions entering the season about dealing him, in particular with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Right there, based on how he does the rest of this year, if he continues what he's done over the last month or so, then that's going to be a fascinating candidate. So I think the thing is, like, there's not really a scenario where he brings back a huge haul just because his track record is what it is. He always gets hurt with something. He always has these bouts where he loses control of where he's throwing. Usually doesn't last more than a couple starts at a time, where he's actually limiting the walks. Where his value, no matter what happens this last month and a half, his value is going to be not huge. Like, you would think that it's somewhere in between like an absolute best case scenario, it's maybe half of what Jazz's value was at the deadline. And that's a best case scenario. If he actually sticks in this rotation the last 8 or 9 starts of the year and is an above average pitcher, that his track record overall, there's still enough underlying concerns that teams are going to see him as a number 4 starter, if that, moving forward. Somebody that has a potential to maybe break through, but has already had quite a few opportunities and hasn't put it all together yet. Yeah, the one that would have even more value, you would think, is potentially Braxton Garrett, because what he's already done at the big league level the last couple of years, the way he's performed and how overall he had been healthy last season from start to finish. Like, he is the one, potentially him, that could have the highest value among the ones available. And with Jesus Luzardo, like, I don't even think it's worth dwelling too much on him this offseason, just because he's going to be coming off this injury and because he didn't perform well prior to the injury this year. He had an ERA of 5, and he wasn't working deep in the games, and his velocity was down. They'll listen on anybody. I mean, that's the thing that Bendix has been clear about. You're going to be receptive to some crazy ideas if the offers are right. But I don't think that they're going to get what they want from Luzardo this offseason. I think for all parties involved, that's something that would make sense to evaluate once he actually returns to his usual form in 2025. And then you still have, that would be, it's never going to be quite what his value was last offseason. But I think that makes sense for everybody involved to hold on to him and see how it plays out next year.
Thanks. That's all I had.
Awesome. So we'll wrap it up there, right around the 1 hour mark. Thanks to Alex Carver for talking in, a little bit of Luis Weiss, a tiny bit of Isaac Azut in there, and our callers as well. 24 hours from now, Marlins Jeopardy. It's going to stream here on Twitter on the Fish on First account and on YouTube and on Facebook. It's the first trivia show we've done since the start of the regular season, and we have a whole lot of good questions loaded up. So that's always a good time on an off day. Something that we do a little more in the off season usually, but given the state of this season and the way that the schedule lines up, we thought it was a great opportunity to sneak that in. So we hope people tune in for that, and then we're back on our grind again starting on Tuesday when the team goes on the road against the Phillies and then on the Mets. So a whole lot of coverage between now and then. Thanks as always for the support and the participation on our shows. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, and go Fish.